So many men and women put their life on the line every single day so that we can have our freedoms here in this country. We just got done celebrating Memorial Day this past weekend, taking time to remember all of our fallen heroes who have made the ultimate sacrifice. And I have to ask this question, as a family leading man, are we living in a way that honors their sacrifice? Are we showing up as a present husband and father for our family? Are we progressing as men and learning how to become more capable in all areas of life? How are we actually investing our time? These are all great questions that I ask myself on a daily basis. What's going on, fellas? Welcome to Alpha Dad Consulting. I am your host, G. Vidal, and on this show, we focus on helping family men rise above the challenges that they face as husbands and fathers to embracing their role as a leader so that they can create the life at home they truly desire. We do this by bringing you tactics and strategies, resources, and conversations with incredible men who are playing this game of being a family leader at a high level. This past weekend, I had the honor and privilege to interview my fellow brother, Chris Nastasi. Chris is a veteran Army Ranger who felt compelled and called to serve his country in his late 20s. Unlike many men that joined right out of high school, Chris had already established a life and career when he decided to go serve. Not only is this man a savage and very capable, he is also a family man with an amazing wife and 2 kids. He's a good man who's conquered a lot of adversity and now pours into helping other men do the same. Please enjoy our conversation as we discuss his story and the many lessons he's picked up throughout his journey. Let's go.
I can see the enemy approaching the battleground. Hear the drums pound like a thunder sound loud. I gather up my crowd to prepare them for what's coming. We've been summoned.
All right, dude. Well, welcome to Alpha Dad Consulting. Welcome to the show. And what I want to start with is kind of how your life was, growing up in Nastasi, household, and and specifically, I'd really like to dive into your relationship with your dad, man.
Sure.
And kind of that dynamic, because I feel like it plays a lot into us as men as we grow up, right? As we become fathers ourselves, as we become husbands, for better or for worse, that relationship has an effect on us, right? So
of course.
Let's start there. Household when you were young, relationship with your dad is like cool.
Yeah. So I grew up on Long Island, so on the North Shore of Long Island, in a town called Bayville, New York, and it's a small town. It's a small blue collar town. Like, I kind of feel like if you don't know it's there and you don't know New York City's only an hour away, you don't really know. Like that's just something you don't know until you kind of move, step a little further away from it, and it starts to get a little bit more crowded, a little bit more New York feel. I am Nastasi's Greek. It's Sicilian. I mean, it's Italian, it's Sicilian. My mom's side's all Greek. So I grew up in a very Mediterranean family knit community. My dad grew up in Yonkers, New York. So it almost like it's just a little bit north of the Bronx. And my mom grew up in Queens, and then they moved out to Long Island when she was in high school, into that area of the town that I grew up in. My grandfather on my mom's side, I was extremely close with. So while I was growing up, my dad worked a lot, and my grandfather was a father figure. We spent a lot of time together. I lived 2 separate occasions. My family lived in their house while we were having a home built. The area I lived in was a blue collar, but at the same time, like, I grew up very well off. Like, I didn't want for anything. So very lucky and very, never had to worry about a meal. Never had to worry about a roof, things like that. So definitely, I understand how grateful and lucky I am. So the father question, right, is something that has been something that's been on my mind for a while. Like we said, I guess I'm a new father. I've been a father for a little bit over 3 years now, and you know that question has been a question I've kind of been diving into recently. And one of the things that I've come up with is, my dad has taught me a lot of things. He's also taught me a lot of things of that I don't want to be, and how I don't want to act. But growing up, you know, when he was around, I remember a good relationship. He worked a lot. He did. He's in film production, so he was not around a lot. He started his own company, and he was always working, always working. But my dad likes nice things. I love my dad, but he likes nice things. He likes to have his nice car, his country club, his that status. Whereas I'm probably a lot simpler of a person. That type of stuff doesn't really matter to me. I'll drive the same truck till the wheels fall off type guy. So those are the little bit of my relationship with my father. As we've gotten older, my dad played baseball growing up. He was a very good baseball player. He played minor league baseball, and I followed in his footsteps. I played college baseball. I played 2 years of independent minor league baseball, so not affiliated with a big league team. But I got paid to play baseball for 2 years, and it was a great experience. I learned a lot. So we always bonded over sports. That was one of the things that we bonded over. I think that was his way of teaching life. And because baseball is such a game of failure, it was his way of teaching how to fail and come back. Those are, I think, a lot of the memories and a lot of the lessons I learned with him, what was through sports, and specifically through baseball.
Gotcha. Yeah, man. Yeah, I didn't grow up playing playing sport. I wasn't like the sports guy. My dad actually he was I mean soccer, right? Hispanic family,
Mm,
like just it's common. And he was a pretty decent soccer player in El Salvador.
mm,
Won like a couple trophies and that kind of thing. And for me, man, like that was one thing that I tried to bond with him on,
yep.
right? Like I tried to play soccer and I tried to do those things. But for whatever reason, it just didn't click.
Mm,
It was one of those things where kind of like your dad, he was busy, right? He was
yeah.
working. He had to do overtime shifts and all
Right.
that to put food on the table and that kind of thing. So those extracurricular activities like playing soccer with his son, it wasn't a priority, right? It
Right.
was there was this perception of especially like and I don't know if this is like the same true with like Italian
Mm,
households or even like Mediterranean, right? Like
yeah.
where if the dad has the perception that if they're putting food on the table, right, and they're providing for the family, like
Right.
you're good, like you're a solid, like you know what I mean,
Right.
like you're killing it as a dad type of thing.
Right.
And I think it probably, it's like a generational thing because it was probably the
Mm.
same thing with his dad and his dad before that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. That's probably right. I know. My grandfather, my dad's dad, he was a Supreme Court judge of New York. He was a judge. Yeah, he played baseball as well. They bonded through baseball, and um, yeah, so that was kind of my granddad on that side. Yeah, always working, always kind of doing that as well. So
but that's what's cool is that you had your grandpa, right? Like he was
yeah,
like that father figure, like the one that was a staple for you, like there at the house and that kind of thing.
yeah, and
You know,
that story, his story is a whole podcast in itself.
really.
That man is an interesting. He was an interesting man and had a lot of phenomenal stories. And you could write a book or a movie about his story. The overview is that He was born in the States in 1932. His mother got tuberculosis, and him and his sister, who were 6 and 4, got sent back to Greece to live with family,
Wow.
with aunts and uncles. Fast forward a little bit, World War II breaks out. They're stuck in occupied Greece of the Germans and Italians, and those stories are amazing. Survive a famine during World War II in Greece, comes back at the age of like 14 or 16 to the States. He is the size of like a 10-year-old because of that.
Yeah.
And he does a thing in the Navy. So he's extremely proud to be an American, and works his way up and becomes one of the top accountants in New York City.
Crazy, man.
Like, and that's just the overview of of that man.
Specifics of every little, right? Like, that's cool, man. That's
American dream to a T. Worked his tail off, like, just so that theme is extremely surrounded by how I grew up, is just work ethic and kind of keep your mouth shut. One of the things my father always told me growing up, he's like, nobody cares, man. Just work harder because today's a new day, and it's what have you done for me lately, world.
Yeah.
So that was kind of one of the things that
truthful advice right there.
Yeah, it's one of those things that has always kind of stuck with me growing up. And there's always somebody out there working harder than you.
Yes, sir. It's very true. It's very true. Oh, what does Matt always say, right? I dare you to outwork me.
Yeah.
Dad me.
Yeah, but I will say so I look back at this a lot, and one of my favorite memories I have with my dad is I had to be like 7 or 8 years old, and we went up to a West Point football game because my grandfather would get tickets. So it was my grandfather on my dad's side, my dad, my uncle, and my cousin, who's a year older than me. And we went out and went to a West Point football game. And we got this cool little like Army golden black football. And for like weeks after that, I would make my dad throw me like routes in the backyard. And until his like arm would fall off, I would just be like, let's go, Dad, come on. I want to throw, like, because I really enjoyed just running around and playing ball. That was like my favorite thing, especially with my dad. That was my favorite thing to do. We would play stick ball a lot, wiffle ball a lot. Never let me win. Never let me win until I could beat him. Which it came. I think it happened around like 10 or 12 where I finally like beat him.
Nice. But he put you through the grind, right? Like,
oh yeah. It was ass whoopings up until then.
Yeah, that's funny, man. So talk to me about when, as you're growing up, when does the Army come into play, right? Did your grandfather have a big?
So both of my grandfathers served. So my dad's dad was officer in the Marines, and my mom's dad was a radio man in the Navy. Both peacetime guys. Both like happened to catch it between the Korean and Vietnam wars. So wasn't like they weren't really doing. They didn't see much in that aspect, but both served their country. So I think it was like always like something that I enjoyed. I enjoyed looking up to. I thought it was really cool to see the flags. Like I said, we went to that West Point game. That was really cool, made an impact on me. But I was also that kid in the neighborhood that would play manhunt, would play like commando, and was always better at it than everybody else, and just enjoyed it. Just enjoyed running around, hiding, and like sneaking up on people in the woods, and like, um, so I kind of just, it was always something that was there. When I was a kid, I played pretend sports, or I played like like military stuff, and those were the two things that I really gravitated toward, to like run around and explore and do things like that. When I turned 18, I thought I tried to join the Marines. I was like, they do a great job marketing. They do this awesome job of like, warrior type mentality. And I was very close. I like walked into recruiters' offices, did everything. And my dad's like, look, he pulled me aside. He's like, hey man, like, are you crazy? Like, you have scholarships to play baseball in college, go get a degree. And then you could go back maybe as an officer or whatever. Because he didn't really know any better. It's they don't really know what they don't know about the military. Like, what my family, like, no one really knew anything. At 24, I had a serious girlfriend. Her father was in the Army, and I was gung ho about doing it again. And she talked me out of it then. Fast forward like 2 years, we're not dating anymore. And so it was like the whole reason I enjoyed was because of this girl, and silly, right? So silly.
Yeah.
And now I am 28 years old. I've been coaching college baseball for 4 years. I really enjoyed what I was doing. I enjoy making a difference in these kids' lives. I love teaching, talking about hitting. I love talking about life with them, and I'm good at it. But I'm also living in New York, doing construction, doing moving, bartending, working all these jobs to make kind of ends meet. And I was living with my now wife. We just started living together, and I had kind of put this on the back burner, this Army thing. Like, it was kind of like gone. But I had a conversation with one of my little brother. He's 5 years younger than me, with one of his really good friends who's an officer in the Army. And he kind of talks to me, and we're having this conversation. And mind you, this is like, we're at a party. It's kind of like a drunk conversation, but the seed has been now replanted.
Okay.
And I wake up one morning and I look in the mirror and I'm like, you're doing this. And it's like, that's it. No one's talking you out of it. No one's kind of I'm like, when you're 50 years old, if you don't do this, you are going to regret it.
Wow.
So, the Army has different options to join with different contracts. So they have what's called an 18 X-ray, where you can kind of come off the street as a civilian, go through basic, and go to then airborne school, and then go to SFAS, which is Special Forces Selection and Assessment, right? That was kind of what I wanted to do. Now, when you join the Army, you have to take a ASVAT test or whatnot, and I didn't do as well as it was like all high school stuff. And again, now I'm 28.
Yeah,
I'm a little bit further removed from high school, so I didn't score that well. And the recruiter comes back. He's like, hey, I know you want to do this kind of stuff. There isn't really anything about we can't get you into this selection because you don't qualify yet. But we can do is give you this option 40 contract. And I'm like, what's that? He's like, it's to become a ranger. So again, don't really know much about all this stuff. All you hear is all like the little stuff. So I start diving into it. I come back home. I'm like, oh, let me think about this. I go home, and then just, the internet. This is 2006. Internet's good. I'm doing a lot of research, and I look up what is a U.S. Army Ranger, and the mission statement is kill, capture, high value targets, and I'm like, where do I sign up? Like, that's me. let's do this.
Yeah.
And I was like, and so everything kind of happens for a reason in that aspect. And you know, the only kind of person I really talked to about doing it with was my then girlfriend, now wife. I was like, hey, you good about this? Like, we cool? Like, and we're like, yeah, let's do it. And so yeah, at 28 years old, I joined the United States Army.
Wow, that's crazy, man. Yeah. That's such a unique story because, it's you always hear these guys, right? Like even some of the mentors we've had in
Yeah.
Apogee, it's always like 17, 18, right? Like they just go
Hmm.
right in out of high school. Maybe they just didn't have any other options and all that.
Yeah.
And here you are, you at 28, like I mean, you've lived a life already, right? Like you've had
Yeah.
career moves, you had all these jobs and all that,
Yeah.
but you were impacting kids through the coaching, right? Like the baseball coaching and that. I
Yeah.
mean, and then you have that dynamic shift where you're like, nah, like there's something more, like there's something missing that I gotta go
Hmm.
do, right?
And it was, sorry to cut you off. It
No,
was,
no, no, go.
um, also throughout this whole thing, 9/11 is still in my back pocket. Like, I was a freshman in high school when it happened. I am very close to the city. Like, you could see the smoke for months. So it's still, it was something that's always been in the back of my mind
Yeah,
when I was growing up. Had a few friends lose some family members,
man.
and so that was always kind of in the back of my mind as well. Um, but yeah, it was definitely a, and I talk about this all the time. I don't know if I would have made it at 17 or 18. Like,
Yeah,
physically I could have done it. I don't know if I was ready mentally for it.
yeah, I see what you mean. Yep.
So it was, and around that time too, I don't want to use I don't know what the kind of words we want to use but you can always blurt it out. But
Yeah,
around that time, 2016, 2017, 18,
yeah.
it was like the pussification of America was starting.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like seeing it. And I grew up in New York City. And again, talking about my dad, love the men I grew up around as people, great people. But I didn't learn like skills like how to shoot a gun, how to survive in the woods, how to um be kind of free and depend on yourself. And I never learned that from anybody, and I wanted to. That was like a desire of mine. And of course, I wanted to go serve my country and you know, as cliche as it sounds, do bad things to bad men because somebody's got to do it. And those are those are all weighed into that.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, man, that makes sense. And yeah, I think it's such a big need right now, right? For just young men in general, man, like that rite of passage, that like how to, I always think about that. Like, when do you get to a point where like you needing the affirmation of another man, right? Like a grown man to tell you, hey, man, like you're a man, like put his hand on your shoulder and that kind of thing. Um, I used to think that I didn't need that, you know,
Right.
but man, like it's so essential for a young man to get that confirmation, that affirmation from another man to know that they're going down the right track, right?
Right.
On manhood, right?
Hmm.
Whatever that is or looks like for each individual, everybody's a little bit different, right? But the basic kind of core values of like integrity, honesty, those kinds of things, to be a protector, to be a leader, all these kind of I guess put it masculine traits, we can call them, right? And
Hmm.
it's so important to find other men that embody those things that you can emulate, and then you live up to that standard, right? Like,
Right.
yeah, man, it's yeah, I definitely get you on that, and needing that and like wanting that, right? Even
Hmm.
if it's like the manly stuff, like freaking survival and being able to protect
Right.
effectively, right? Fighting, that kind of thing. So yeah, man,
Hmm.
I'm with you there.
Yeah.
Um, I wanted to dive into this this aspect that something I've seen with like vet friends that I have, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when they get out of the army, when they get out of whatever service they're in, whatever branch of the military they were in, um, there's always this switch of, coming from combat, coming from always being in kind of constant danger, and then going back
Mm-hmm.
into, civilization, going back into like being a civilian, I should say.
Right.
And how have you found that you switch that off? You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
there's a perception that you have when you're out in combat in those
Oh
places,
yeah.
when you're always in danger, and now you're back in safe America, right? Like where
Right.
you don't have to technically look over your shoulder all the time.
Mm-hmm.
How do you turn it off, man? Do you even
Now,
turn it off? Like, you know what I mean?
so I guess my question would be: is this for when you transition out of the army or out of the service, or like when you come home from a deployment?
I would say maybe when you transition out of the service, like when you
Okay.
know that you're no longer going to go back in and now you're out,
Okay.
right?
Yeah. So I'll answer both of those kind of because they kind of
Sure.
coincide, right? So it's always been interesting when you come home from a deployment or a school that, it's not a deployment, but you have little contact and you're kind of in savage mode because that's what you need to do to pass that school. It's tough, right? There's about a 2 week period, 3 week period where like my wife and I, we as each one has happened, as like we've done more and more and more of them, we come better and better at of them, and like understanding what my role is when I come back into the house, or um, maybe I am not talking as sweet to her because I've just been around alpha men for the last 4 months, and and in an environment where your cortisol levels spiked, and we sleep when we're over there, we sleep during the day and we're up all night because all our missions, most of our missions will take place at night.
Yeah.
So we are on a reverse schedule where I'm waking up at 5 p.m. and we're doing the vampire shift till 6 to 10 in the morning.
Yeah.
So it's just this whole different, like you don't really see the sun, and so it's a different kind of feel. Now I don't think you ever come out of that cortisol spike when you're active, especially in Ranger Regiment. I can't talk about any other unit because I spent my whole career in 1st Ranger Battalion in Savannah, Georgia. So like besides training, I was never anywhere else in the country, or any other unit. So how we were designed, it's a little different now with some things going on in the world, obviously, and not in Afghanistan anymore. We would deploy for 4 months, come back, train for 8 months, deploy for 4 months, come back, train for 8 months. And that was just what we did. And that's how we operated. So you don't really have time to think about that. And because you're being assessed every single day, you never really take your foot off the gas. I like to think of it, and I'm sure other units are like this. Rangers are like a car without a check engine emergency light. We will without a gas light, we are going to push that thing until it breaks down or until it runs down, and you're like, what the hell's wrong with me now? Because we don't know any better. That's just who we are. We're gonna go.
Yeah.
So answering your question now, right, about how to transition out of front to the civilian world, it's been extremely difficult. I'm not gonna lie, like I technically got out of the Army in July of 21, and we are coming up on almost 2 years. and think I am just starting to feel okay again. And not in the sense of like, woe is me, pity party, all this, right? And I think I'm one of the easy having a better solution to this because I didn't do two things. When I had my son, I pretty much stopped drinking. So that was 3 years ago. I come from an alcoholic family.
Yeah.
I have alcoholic. I was an alcoholic. I'm not going to even, like put around this, but it's also the culture I was in as well. So, went from college, which you're like, I'm not an alcoholic. I'm just a college student. Then it was like, I'm not an alcoholic. I just play baseball and we kind of drink. And then it was like, I'm not an alcoholic. I'm a ranger and we all drink, and that's the culture, right? So it's like, but really taking a 30,000-foot view over this, I was like, God damn, I'm an alcoholic. So let's figure this out.
Yeah.
So I fixed that. I personally would rather sit at a pain of 5 all day long than take any kind of opioids. So I've never taken like a Percocet. I've never taken an Oxycontin. I've never taken anything because I'd rather sit in the pain than ever take one of those things because I know how addictive they can be.
Yeah.
So I stayed away from that kind of stuff right away. Like, yeah, I've had my TBIs. Yeah, I've had my back stuff. I have really bad. I have something torn in 3 out of my 4 limbs, and I still won't take anything. I do a lot of acupuncture, massage therapy, things like that will help me fix that. I take a lot of. I'll do like naturopathic herbs,
Okay.
but I won't do stuff that's going to pharmaceutical stuff that's going to send me down this hill, man. Like, I've seen it too much. So those things, it might take more time mentally to get through things because I won't take that stuff or SSRIs or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I know the long-term game is going to pay off. Yeah. So also, the Army or the military does a pretty good job now of helping service members transition from job, military service, to job, whatever civilian world there is, right? What I think they do a really bad job of is teaching the service member it's not just a job, it's a culture and a lifestyle change. Right? So being in the Army, being in Ranger Regiment, I was in a bubble for 8 years of surrounding myself with special operation people and their wives and their families, and mothers are telling their kids that their dad is off slaying dragons. Like that's his job. Things like that. Like it's a community that's tight knit. That's somebody's having a hard time or just had a baby and they're getting meals for 2 weeks from other family from like other service members' families, and we're a big family. Some of the guys I served with, at least a few of them, I truly believe I am closer with than my own family blood members. Like I love them. I will love them forever. Like that's just who they are. And it's hard to be, that was hard to be. And I was one of the first guys of that group to start to like step away.
Oh, gotcha.
So a lot of them are still in, a lot of them are still doing the job. And, I want to be there. I want to be there doing it with them. That's who I am. But I also took a step back and was like, what's the main why I'm getting out? And it's because I want to be a present father. I want to be, what's more important to me is to set the example and be there for I have a 3-year-old son and a 1.5 year old daughter, and I want to be there for them. I want my son to look at me and be like, that's the kind of man I want to be. And I want my daughter to look at me and be like, that's the kind of man I want to marry. So those are the things that are were driving me to get out. And so I have to take a step back and remind myself, you know, and I worked so hard to get a job from transitioning out that I forgot why I was getting out. And some circumstances have happened recently. I was fired, my wife got a job, and so now I kind of am like, this is awesome. This happened for me. This being fired happened for me, and now I get to be dad, and I really enjoy for the moment. I'm really soaking in this time with my children, and time with my wife, and not really stressing about everything, because everything's gonna be okay.
Yo, real quick, before we continue on with the content, right now, here in the US alone, close to 50% of all marriages are ending in divorce. That means 50% of families are broken, and the dad usually gets voted off the island and has to fight back with the courts to regain access to his kids. It is one of the worst things happening to our families right now, and here at Alpha Dad Consulting, we are on a mission to change this statistic. Most of the time, these divorces happen as a result of how you as a man show up to lead your family. This was the case when I almost lost mine. I was trying to be my wife's dad instead of trying to be her man, and it created a series of problems that almost ended our marriage. If I wouldn't have changed as a husband, as a man, and as a leader, our children would have never entered this world. Can you imagine your kids not existing, all because of something you failed to do? I can't, and I refuse to. It took a lot of trial and error for me to turn my marriage around and create the family life I wanted. Look, I don't know where you are right now, but if your family life is not what you envisioned, a passionate marriage full of love and respect, an unbreakable bond with your kids, a fortified mindset, along with the necessary skills to build a life of abundance, then I want to give you the advantage I didn't have while I was figuring all this out. It's called the Alpha Dad Challenge, a free 7-day challenge that runs you through a proven blueprint of actions I've curated that you can take daily for 7 days to change your family life and get it closer to what you've always envisioned. The best part is that they don't take much time for you to do, and if you do them, they will have a significant impact on you and your family. Just go to alphadadconsulting.com/challenge to sign up. Again, that's alphadadconsulting.com/challenge. Accept the challenge and start showing up as the leader your family deserves. Now let's get back to the content.
And it's starting to finally be okay again in my own head. I think I've been taking, there's a lot of good organizations out there that help vets, especially like TBIs. I had quite a few TBIs from, jumping at airplanes and setting off explosions and things like that. And, a bunch of gunfire. And so, whether it's been major TBIs or a bunch of micro TBIs, they still do the same damage. And so that's been interesting. My patience is starting to come back, all things like that.
Sorry, what TBI, is that like traumatic?
So a traumatic brain injury.
Traumatic brain, gotcha. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so like a concussion or any kind of like severe vibration or loud noise that's going to move your brain around inside your head.
Wow, bro.
Yeah, and they have major ones, which obviously are like, times you lose consciousness or something like that. And then they have what's called a micro TBI, and it can happen from just shooting a gun right next to your head. And it's enough where you do it enough times, it all adds up.
Of course, yeah. That's wild, bro. It's wild that you had to go through that, man. But I want to congratulate you on the alcohol thing, man. And
thank you.
Yeah, because that's a big step, bro. Because so many men, like that's a big vice, and just like you were describing it, it's just what we do, right? It's just like the pastime. It's just like you're hanging with your friends, the boys, whatever it is, and it's just, or even in your brotherhood with the army, right? Like it was just what you guys did. And so, that's good on you that you recognize that, becoming a father, and then going into this season of life, determining your why as to why you wanted to kind of break, that it was time for you to move on from that, as hard as it is, because I know like you love your brothers, right? And you want to be there to
Yeah.
support them and all that. But then you have this beautiful family that you're forming with your wife, and, your kids are growing up and all that. And, there's a lot of guys that don't recognize that, right? Like
Yeah.
the
It's a hard shift, man. It's a
yeah,
hard shift. And it's a hard shift to realize, because when you're in it, you don't feel replaceable. You feel like because of the brotherhood and all that. But at the end of the day, right? Like, something were to happen to me, if I were to die, if I were to gotten killed, or if I got injured, right? Severely injured, guess what, man? Those people will care, right? My brothers, the people that care about me will care and will take care of each other.
yeah,
But guess what? My job will be filled by the end of the week. Somebody will be doing my job.
yeah.
And no one's doing my job as a dad,
Wow, that's powerful, bro. Yeah, I didn't really
right? Like,
think of that. Yeah, that's
nobody's gonna ever fill my job as a dad or a husband to my wife. Maybe she gets remarried, but nobody's gonna be that same dude, right? Nobody's gonna be the guy that she married at 24 or 25 on this crazy adventure.
yeah,
And so that's kind of that hit me in the head, and I was like, ah, you're always replaceable in some places. In some places, you are never replaceable.
yes, sir. Wow.
So that kind of, and again, the why, man.
Yeah.
Everybody asks me, how do you do things? I don't say how or how do you, it's why.
Mm.
Because if you want it bad enough, you will figure it out.
Yep. Yep. That's exactly right. Yeah. I love that, man. That's powerful. That's powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to, since we're kind of on the topic of the army, and since
Mhm.
we're talking about like the TBIs and all that, and I I want to dive into a hard topic with you, because this is something that I see plague a lot of men as well, and it's suicide, right?
Mhm.
Like the not only vets, but even just men out there in general, uh, choosing to go that route as an exit
Right.
plan. Choosing that. What do you think right now is causing that, right?
Mhm.
And what what can we do, right? Like in our circle of friends, and our like in what we're doing with Apogee, like what can we do to
Yeah.
kind of change that stat, man, so that doesn't keep happening to people, or to men, I should say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so this is also something that I don't talk about much, but in my early 20s, um, I struggled with it a lot. I
Mm,
struggled with the demand of it a lot with life. I'm not going to get into details too much, but two separate occasions had plans. One separate occasion was standing on the top of a building, and I don't know what it was, but I pulled back. And I don't talk about, like, again, not a lot of people know this, so this is going to be cool when people find out. um, but it's a demon. It's a demon in us, right? And I think a lot of that is suppressed by drugs, alcohol, and we don't know how to talk about it. I think a lot, the route that I took, I think pharmaceuticals plays another route, right? Like, I even spoke to a person in my 20s. I spoke to somebody, a doctor,
yeah.
and they wanted to push meds right away.
Right away, right?
And-
That
Yep.
was that. Oh man, yeah. That's,
And
man, I just
and
got
I was like,
off like that when I hear that.
and I, and even then, back then, I was like, that's a band-aid, brother. Like, that ain't
Yeah,
gonna. I know I'm fucked up, but that's a band-aid.
yeah,
And so I was able to get through it with a lot of, kind of started doing my deep work then on me. on how to control emotions, how to see things objectively, and how to understand emotional Chris is thinking this, but logical Chris knows this, right? So how does when something happen or a conversation happen, logical Chris knows that this is okay, like we're good, but still understand that emotional Chris has the validity to be emotional about something for a hot second, understand that your emotions and you're going to feel something, but then good, bad, and different, that feeling needs to kind of come to the front, and then logical Chris comes out and be like, all right, this is how you deal with that feeling. Either, talk to somebody or go for a run or go to the gym or go to the range and shoot or something that's going to, help that emotion become something that's productive instead of, I don't need, instead of going to grab a beer or going to, light up a cigarette or a joint or something like that.
Another
right?
Band-Aid, like you were saying, right?
Right. Another Band-Aid.
Yeah.
And maybe, right, going on a run is a Band-Aid as well, but it's a healthier Band-Aid.
Yes,
and if we can choose the healthier option, right? And maybe it's not healthy long term. I don't know, but I know it helps me, and it gives me, right, like the way I look at it, right, we don't ever stay the same. We either get better or get worse. And if I go for that run, I'm going to get better. I'm going to put another brick in this fortress of Chris that I'm building. And if I go have a beer, I'm going to get worse. I'm going to take a brick out, or maybe even 5 bricks out, or maybe even a whole wall, because I know what that could do to me long term. And now this fortress that I'm building, this not tough, but this man that I want to be, is now being taken apart a little bit. And so, like, the decisions I start to make are is this going to make me a better man? Is this going to make me a better father, husband? And then that's the way I kind of go for that. I know we're kind of off topic a little bit, but that's kind of the way I look at it. I know for the veteran community, right, and it's starting to come out now, it's starting to get a little bit better, where people are like, hey, I'm here for you. Hey, I'm here. You can call me. We can talk. I'm always going to be your brother. But as the brother that says that we're always there for them, sometimes you just got to call. Like, that your brother's, you're not going to call. Like, no one, like, that dude's not going to call you. Like, that's not who we are. So we have to be the people that reach out to them to make sure that you're okay. And before they even reach out to you, because at the end of the day, ego is always going to get in the way of everybody, of everything. And if you're willing to put your ego aside and reach out to those people, and that'll help. Something I read recently or learned recently, which I thought was really cool, was like the Native Americans, when the war parties would come, when the men would come back from their war party to the tribe, they would all sit around the fire and kind of tell the story of what happened, what they just experienced, to the old elders and to the women, and now it wasn't this burden that they had to hold on by themselves. It was a joint effort. It was a community of kind of like, this is what happened, and now we can move forward together as a stronger unit.
Wow.
Like, kind of look. And I thought that was really cool, because now with the global war on terror, you're having more veterans come back better and more, because guess what? Medicine has gotten better. The tactics on the battlefield have gotten better. And so more and more warriors are coming home. So we need to figure out how to help them in that transition. And I think a lot of that is, guys are going to miss the community, which is, for me, one of the biggest reasons why I joined Apogee was, I want to be a better father and husband, but I knew that I needed a community. I've been in a locker room my whole life, playing sports, playing even as a coach, as a ranger. Like, that is a brotherhood. That is a bond. That is a trust that you need. And when you come out, you are all alone. You have your family, but most of your family has no idea what you just went through.
Yeah.
And so you need to build this community. It doesn't matter if it's through jiu-jitsu, through a gym, through a men's group, but if you're willing to build and be vulnerable and put your ego aside and learn and build this community, then you grow and your identity doesn't just become a soldier or ranger. It becomes, now you're part of this new community, and you can and you can value that and bring and pour your wisdom into that. And that's what we want, right? We all want to be valued.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
So, my biggest advice to guys is find community, understand what you're doing on your way out. Like, you don't have to have a great plan, but understand that these things are going to happen. It doesn't matter if it's 6 months away or a year out or 2 years out. At one point you're going to be like, where my boys at?
Yeah.
And I need somebody to just lean on once in a while.
Yeah, man. And I think what I've come to find is that the more I reach out, right, like to brothers, and we start these conversations, man, that wouldn't have otherwise happened, right? If we don't reach out and take that time to hey, man, I was kind of thinking about this dude. Let me just shoot him a text, right? It doesn't have to be this elaborate thing. It's just hey, man, just thinking about you. How you doing? How's the family, right? And then just that alone will open up this conversation between you and that person or that guy that you haven't spoken to maybe in a year or two, right? And then what I've come to find is that as I do that more, I've come to set the ego aside, like you were saying, right? And now I'll reach out to certain brothers and I'll tell them about a win I had.
Right.
I never did that before,
Yeah.
But I'll be like, hey, man, dude, I spoke to a client today. I locked in a client, you know what I mean? And it's just, and you'll have a brother that'd be like, dude, that's awesome. Just celebrating with you. And I would have never, when I was lone wolfing this whole thing, never thought about that. Never even crossed my mind,
Which is crazy, right? Because we're taught as kids and to be a man or in the army, to suffer in silence.
Yeah.
No one wants to hear about your shit, right? But if you look at the evolution of humans, we are a social community people that need each other, right? That's why there were hunters and gatherers. That's why there were a family to help raise your family while you were out hunting, right? That it's we depended on each other. And somewhere along that industrial revolution that became more individualized, we were taught keep your shit inside. And don't get me wrong, I don't think you should complain all the time, and I don't think you should lay it out there all the time, but there is a time and place, right? And there's a time and place for it. And I also believe I'm not one of those people that's hey, you need to feel your feelings and and feel sorry for yourself. I think you could feel sorry for yourself, but there's got to be a time limit. I give myself 10 minutes to maybe 24 hours at the most. And then it's all right, pick yourself up and figure out what needs to be done. Start your plan of action and go.
Yeah. That's the key, dude. That's it. Because so many men will err on the side of just being overly emotional, right? There's a balance, and they'll be overly emotional, cry for everything. It's just all right, man, I get it, but it's that victim, it's that glorified victimhood right now that's going on, man, in our culture. Who's the biggest victim? You know what I mean? And who's got the most pain? Who has the worst story? And
Right.
it's
Yeah.
like
Well,
there's no,
trying to one up that.
yeah, man, like that's not the competition here, man. Like, your story and your moments of weakness can be extrapolated like as scenes that could help another
Mhm.
individual, right?
Right.
And I think in those moments, those are good to have as tools where you can be vulnerable and you can say, "Hey, man, like I went through this too, bro." Like I mean, what you just described with the suicide, right? The thing, like the story, like I didn't know that about you. And you sharing that with me and sharing that with the brothers and the people that are listening right now, dude, like that's gonna help somebody. That's
Right.
gonna help them because they're gonna see like, wow, Chris, he had those feelings too. He had that, but he didn't stay there, right? Like he
Right.
got out of there. He realized he found his why and he
Hmm.
decided that he needed to be there because, the job could replace him with anyone, but his family, he was irreplaceable there. So you know what I
Right.
mean? Like that mentality, those are the key components that are missing,
Right.
with people in terms of where they stay in that victimhood, where they stay in that pain and they just live there, man. Like they need like you said, like solutions,
Mhm.
right? You need to stay there for a limited amount of time and then get out, man. Like let's
Right.
let's let's execute a plan. So
Right. And even if the plan sucks, just move.
yeah, just
Just
move.
like
Yeah.
just get out of there.
You'll find the answer along the way, right? As
Right.
as you start messy in that execution of the plan. So yeah,
Exactly.
man, I love that, bro. That's and I really like that thing you told me about the tribes and like the Native
Yeah.
Americans.
Yeah.
Because yeah, as you were telling me that story, I was thinking like, man, what if we did that for our servicemen? Like, right? They
Right.
like our people in the military, they come back out of some kind of combat thing and they have that type of communal. What kind of a difference would that make, right? For them to be
Right.
able to talk about the event that just occurred immediately after it just occurred, within
Hmm.
reason, of course, if they're harmed or anything like that
Right.
as they recover, but so that it could be an immediate effect of community feeling, right?
Right.
And healing, right? And instead of just suppressing it, and it's like, nah, let's go
Right.
back, right? Like we got to go back and do it again. We'll
Right.
talk about that later.
Right.
And it's
And
like,
I think that's the hard dichotomy that you're gonna find is
mm,
because most guys in special operations
yeah,
are going to they love what they do so much, and
yeah,
if they talk about it, now they can't go back.
okay, I see what
Like
you
the
mean.
army, the military won't. They're like, "Yo, you're not fit for that."
Oh,
And
okay. They'll look at that as weakness. Like they'll look at that as
correct,
you're not. Yeah, okay, got you.
stable or
Mm,
whatever. So I think that is the dichotomy shift that we need to make. Is like these guys are still okay to do their job.
yeah,
It's just we need to understand like you just went through trauma. It's
yeah,
okay to talk about it, and you could still go do your job again. Like it's okay. Like there's got to be some kind of like kind of transparency of like this is okay,
yeah.
and you're not going to lose your job. That's the biggest reason why service members won't say anything while they're in, especially while they're in service, is because you say something. Guess what? Now you don't get to do what you love anymore.
Yeah. Man, that sucks, dude. That
Yeah.
sucks that it's like that. Cause yeah, and I see your point. Yeah, like you wouldn't want to admit that because it'll keep you from doing what you love.
Yeah.
Doing what yeah. That's backwards, man. That
Yeah.
definitely needs to change for sure. All
So
right, brother. Well, one of the things, man, I didn't even notice the time already. Like we're
don't
already.
worry about it. I got time.
You got time? Okay, cool, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I wanted to roll a couple more by you.
Yeah.
I want to talk, kind of switch gears a little bit, talk a little bit about fatherhood, man.
Yeah.
So you're holding your baby for the first time, holding your baby for the first time.
Yeah.
You see, it's your baby boy, right? Your baby boy's the
Hmm.
oldest. Yeah, baby
Yep.
boy's the oldest. My oldest is a boy too. And what's going through your mind, man? What are the emotions? What's going through your mind? Um, Are you scared? Are you not? Are you excited? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah. I
walk me
think.
through that, man.
Whew, okay. So my wife is a absolute badass. She
Nice.
did both births in a birthing center, all natural, no
Nice.
pain, nothing. So she is a tough woman, and she's awesome. And so with our son, she was in labor for a little bit, and she was crowning with him for like 2 hours.
Oh wow. Yeah.
And I'm sitting, so also, which is cool. I don't know if how everybody feels about this, but this is something to me that I thought it was really cool. It's a nurse, the midwife, and me. And I am part of the deliveries. Like I help with both. Like
Nice.
all in it. Like if I could have done more, I would.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful,
So
man. I love that.
that's just who I am as a like, those things don't bother me. I love it. I think it's the coolest thing ever. And so like I'm down, I notice that it's taken a little bit of time, and I do have a little bit of medical background in the military, just like more, not a medic type, but more than the average dude on how to help with trauma medicine and blood, pulses and all that stuff. So I'm like, they're doing a really good job of like making sure the baby's okay. I'm like, how about my wife? She's been crowning for a little bit. So like I'm taking her pulse and making sure she's good and like kind of doing that whole thing. And out comes this dude, and they thought he was smaller than he was. He ended up being like 21 inches, almost 8 pounds. And and they thought he was a little smaller. Yeah. And I'm like, ooh, this is a big kid.
This might have been cracking a little bit.
Yeah. And I'm like, ooh, big boy here.
Nice.
And I don't know. I don't think it hit me right away. I'm not gonna lie. It was like, my first thought was like, hey baby, you're a stud. Like you just did this. Like you're way to go. Like just so proud of her. So proud of what she was able to do. And I was like, this is cool, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
This boy, and the funny thing is we didn't name him for like 48 hours, so we didn't have a name ready. Yeah, it was like we went back for like our 24 or 48 hour checkup, and they're like, you have to name him now.
It's just boy.
Like, yeah. I was calling him Bambino and whatnot, and like but we yeah, my first reaction was just so overwhelmed with pride for my wife and what she was able to do and how amazing she was. And then it was like, all right, let's learn how to change our first diaper and do all that. I think when it really hit me, was because we did a midwife group. We were only there for like 12, 13 hours, and then we went home. And then when it hit me was when I'm putting this baby into the car seat and putting him into the car, and we're driving home, and I'm like, holy shit, I'm a dad now. and I was like, all right. And this goes back to kind of my theory on life and how I feel about myself. Was like, I have the overall principles. I understand what's kind of what it might take. I'm sure I'm gonna miss a lot, but I'm extremely confident that I will figure it out.
Yeah.
Like it might not look pretty.
Yeah.
It might not look like a movie, but I'm gonna figure it out, and I'm gonna do a good job at this. And that was kind of what I was like, that was the feeling.
That's awesome, bro.
Yeah. Awesome. It was a little bit of overwhelm, but at the same time, like, all right, we just take one step at a time and we'll be good.
Yeah. That confidence that you're going to figure it out. You know what I mean? Even though you don't know, like there's so much uncertainty, right? Ahead of you, but you're just, I'm going to figure this out. Like, cause this is awesome. And I need it.
Yeah.
I need to figure this out. Right.
Right.
Yeah, dude, good on your wife, man. That's awesome.
Dude,
She's a
she's
tough
a
lady for sure.
stud.
Yeah, she's a tough lady for sure. That's
Oh
awesome.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. People say it all the time. I'm like, I'm scared of her. Like
Yeah,
that's just not in a bad way, in a good way.
I get what you say.
Like
Yeah.
like she is a she is a woman from New York who's gonna tell you straight
Nice.
and keep you straight.
Yeah. That's good, man. That's good.
Yeah.
All right, bro. I love that. I love that story. Um, yeah, I think that happened with our first one was rough.
Hmm.
It was in the hospital, so we did it kind of like the regular way,
Right.
right? And so that one was rough because they had to like rush in to get Ethan and get him out because they were losing his heartbeat. I think the
Hmm.
umbilical cord was kind of wrapped
Gotcha.
around him, so it was one of those things. I didn't even get to cut the umbilical cord because they were so rushed, right? A bunch of
Right.
doctors that came in to get him. So we had a pretty traumatizing little experience during the time
Yeah.
when we had him, and then when we had our second Mia, she was a lot smoother, right? But it was that kind of thing too, where when you said that he was crowning, right? Like Mia was crowning too
Yeah.
for a little while, and since the doctor wasn't there, they told my wife like, oh, just just hold it, and and my wife was ready to push, man. Like as Mia's there, just crowning, and I'm like, we're gonna wait for the doctor. Like she's ready to
Yeah.
push. Like let's just, and I'm there, dude.
Yeah.
I'm like, let's go. Like let's
Yeah.
just, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm like you. Like it doesn't bug me. Like I think it's like
Yeah.
one of the most beautiful
It's
things, man.
beautiful. It's
It's like
it's
what
just
do they say?
cool.
Like violently beautiful, right? Like it's
Yeah.
because it is it's crazy. It's a crazy
Yeah.
thing. There's a lot of blood. There's all this and that,
Yeah.
but it's such a beautiful moment, man, to see your
Hmm.
child come into this world and hold your child for the first time and just like, wow, like what a freaking privilege, what an honor, right?
Oh yeah.
As a father we have.
It's
Yeah.
it's like awe inspiring, man.
Yeah.
It's so cool. And then with our daughter, she did it in the tub.
Oh
We were in a
wow.
bathtub.
Okay.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
She tried to do that with our son,
Yeah.
and the way it just wasn't working out, so we had to go over back to the bed.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it was cool to be in the tub with her. It was,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah. I'm all for it, man. I'm always down to clown and have a good time and experience things. So like that's life, right? Like
Yeah.
I want to experience it. I want to experience it all.
Yeah.
And that's how I just feel about life. Like we get one go at this thing and I'm gonna enjoy it, but I'm gonna do it the right way.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I love that, man. That's awesome. All right, bro. I want to end it with the last question. I usually ask this to all the guys that come on here. Is in your experience, right? Like working with men and and being an army ranger and
Mhm.
even being around your dad, your grandpa, and just all the men that you've been around, right? If you had to narrow it down to just a few traits,
Mhm.
what makes a dad a great family leader?
Yeah. Um, One thing I learned in the military that really kind of helped me is everything about being intentional, right? Um, that there is time that where you're not doing something is wasted, but that doesn't mean that every time you're not doing something is wasted, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah,
as long as you're intentional about it, um, I think that's extremely huge. And I think your wives and your children know, right? If like, hey, daddy's working, he's working. But if he's here with me, he's here with me. He's not working. Like he's not somewhere else. He's present
mm,
and he's intentional about his time.
mm,
So I think that is extremely important. And then words mean things and actions are stronger. So if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And if I could, if like if those are the only two things I do for the rest of my life, I'm intentional about my time with wherever it is I'm doing,
Yeah.
with whether it's spending time with my wife or spending time with my kids or in the gym or doing something that I want to be doing. It's not wasted. It's not, because like, to me, time is the most valuable thing in the world. You can make money back, you but you can never make time back. You can never make those memories back, because once that time and space is gone, it's gone.
Yeah.
And so I've really learned how to schedule things, but then also be open and free to like what might happen, like what adventures might pop up, and like and enjoy those in that moment.
Yeah.
So that's huge. And then again, like, if I say something, I mean it. And like, I am calculated with my words. I'm methodical with my words. Like, whatever comes out of this thing, is I own it. It's kind of like when you shoot a gun, when you shoot a round, right? As soon as that round leaves your barrel, you own what it does for the rest of that bullet's existence.
Yeah.
Like, so if you're shooting it in an unsafe direction, you own whatever damage that does.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with your mouth. Like, whatever leaves your mouth, you own what you just said and what damage that did, or what good it did. So I truly try to be intentional about what comes out of that as well. And the actions that need to be taken to either continue down that good path or fix it.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I love that answer. Intentionality, and just be true to your word. I mean, what more do you want, right? And a leader, to make sure that that's always there. So I love that, man. That's awesome.
Yep.
Bro, so I know we've talked about this, but know that you got something in the works, where you start something as well. And what I want to know is there anything that we can do to support you? Instagram page, anything that you
I'm gonna give you I'll give you my Instagram, where to reach out. It's modern day Perseus. So big, back to the Greek in me. But it's modern_day Perseus_. And you can reach me on Instagram, DM me, follow along. I try to have fun on there. But I am aspiring to create my own coaching as well, especially focusing on men, fatherhood, and then I'm probably going to dabble in like the young men as well, because I think I have a lot to add there. And I spent so much time with like that 17, 18 to 21-year-old crowd. Like, I kind of understand it a little bit now, and how to teach it and talk to them. I'm getting older, I'm 36, but at the same time, sometimes I feel like I'm still a young gun. So
did you just did you turn 36 this year, or did you?
I turned 36 back in February. Yeah,
that's funny, man. So we're both 87. I just turned 36 last week.
Nice. Yeah.
So we're both on there, man. I get
that's
it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. But I think for me, the biggest thing that's helping me is being in this community and helping each other and serving and I keep saying this. I don't know what's in store, but I know something good is, and I know I have a lot of wisdom and value to bring to people, and over time it'll show up, and it'll be done the right way. I'm not going to force anything. If people want to reach out, I will definitely reach out, and we could talk and have good conversation, and I'm all about helping.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it, man. I appreciate your heart, brother. I appreciate the wisdom that you shared today.
Thank you.
And and I look forward to just being in this brotherhood, man, and being a part of each other's lives of forever,
Yeah,
bro.
for
A
sure.
lifetime of friendship, lifetime of brotherhood. So yeah, man, I love it. I'm all for it. Let's
Yeah.
let's keep this going.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
And thank you, man. Thank you for your time
Yeah.
today. And thank you for your service, brother.
I
Because
appreciate that. And,
yeah,
thank you, G. And thank you for having me on here. I'm humbled and honored to be a part of this. And I like to, I kind of put it in the group yesterday. It's always a weird thanks, right? Because like I enjoyed every minute of it. I wanted to do it. I chose to do it. I could do other things. But I want to thank you for being an American worth serving for, right? Like that's one thing that the thank you for your service gets thrown around a lot, but it's also on you as the person that says it to be that American that's worth serving for us, because we do it because we love it, and we also do it because we love you guys. So
yeah, I appreciate
it's,
that, man.
it's a two-way street.
I appreciate that, man. Because yeah, dude, I do not take my freedoms lightly, man. Like I love them. Every day that I get to wake up with my wife, with our kids, to be able to spend time with them and be with them, and to be able to do stuff like this,
Yep.
it's a privilege, bro. Like this is
Yes.
not something that a lot of countries get, and a lot of people get around the world. So I mean, to complain about all the little minutia and little stuff that goes on in life, it is not. It's not worth it, man. Like
Nope.
we have it so good, and it's in huge part to everything that you guys do.
Mhm.
And even though sometimes we don't have the leaders in office and in government that we want, the fact that you guys still go out and put your lives on the line, regardless, because you're about the people, right? Not
Mhm.
the leaders, and not the politicians and the people trying to make the moves and all that. That's what I love, and that's what I respect, and and I'll live every day honoring that. So
Mhm.
I
Well,
appreciate
thank
that,
you
man. Thank you.
again. Thank you very much, man. Thank you, brother.
All right, bro. We'll talk soon, okay?
All right, have a good one.
You too, bro.
I hope you enjoyed the interview with Chris. If you want to get in touch with him, I will put all of his info in the description / show notes below. All right, my fellow Alpha Dad, I'll catch you on the next one.
1, 2, 3 actions I didn't meet. 4, 5, 6 fear and silence begin to mix. 7, 8, 9 the thought of being emotionless started taking over my mind.